Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the October 17th, 2006 Walnut Creek City Council meeting. Please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Souls, will you please call the roll?
With pleasure, Mayor. Councilmember Scarrell.
Would you like to try that one more time?
Councilmember Scarrell.
Here.
Councilmember Regalia.
Here.
Councilmember Abrams.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Rainey.
Here.
Mayor Hicks.
Here. Next on the agenda, we have a proclamation for a very special citizen of Walnut Creek who cannot be with us this evening because of health challenges. So I hope that she is listening. Whereas Phyllis Roth has been a dedicated follower of the City Council for more than 20 years, attending countless meetings at City Hall or following the proceedings on television. And whereas a longtime Walnut Creek resident established herself as a strong advocate of common sense solutions to community problems, and whereas the City Council appreciated her devoted attendance at our meetings and greatly respected the opinions she expressed on a wide variety of issues and concerns during the public communications portion, although we didn't always agree. Whereas, because of her vast knowledge of the community and political astuteness, Phyllis always brought a keen intellect and valuable perspective, and sometimes fiery rhetoric to the public forum, whether through her insightful remarks at City Council meetings or her eloquent letters to editors of our local newspapers. And whereas sometimes assuming the role of devil's advocate, Phyllis has always sought to provide a fair, rational, constructive, and well-thought-out viewpoint that helped decision-makers to focus on the best outcomes of an issue. And whereas Phyllis is that special citizen whose fierce intelligence and personal dedication to the community has helped make Walnut Creek a better place for all. Now, therefore, I, Kathy Hicks, Mayor of the City of Walnut Creek, on behalf of the Walnut Creek City Council and the citizens of Walnut Creek, do hereby proclaim Tuesday, October 17th, 2006 as Phyllis Roth Day in the City of Walnut Creek to honor and recognize Phyllis as a community treasure whose invaluable influence and guidance will always be appreciated. And I know that my council members join me in wishing Phyllis the very best.
Yes, indeed.
And we will make sure that Phyllis gets this.
Could I just make a comment, Madam Mayor?
Please, go ahead.
I had the opportunity to go and visit with Phyllis. She's in a senior care home in Concord right now, and is unlikely to return to her home in Walnut Creek given the nature of the illness. And I did have a good long discussion about it, and she says she likes the way the city is going, she said, but I still don't agree on the way you rotate your mayor. So, fiercely independent,
yes,
all the way.
Absolutely, definitely. Thank you.
And unopinionated.
Unopinionated.
Well, and I know that some of us will personally deliver this to her. Next on the agenda, we are going to honor another very special citizen of Walnut Creek with a special award from the mayor called the Champion Citizen Award in recognition of commitment to the quality of life in Walnut Creek in creating the Wellness City Challenge. And this evening's recipient is Cindy Gershon. The Wellness City Challenge is a dynamic citywide program working to unite the community with a wellness action plan. And as mayor and on behalf of the entire City Council, I congratulate the local grassroots leadership and vision of Cindy Gershon, a local restaurateur, a small business owner, along with a cadre of dedicated volunteers for their support for a healthy community. Since 1995, Californians have gained 360 million pounds. 1 of 3 children born today will get diabetes. People of all ages aren't getting enough exercise or proper nutrition. The question is, how can we find ways to work physical activity and good nutrition into our everyday lives? Well, the good news is that Walnut Creek is already moving. Through the Wellness City Challenge, citywide partnerships are providing healthy lifestyle opportunities for citizens of all ages, starting with our children and seniors through a network of healthy experiences. The City of Walnut Creek is proud to be a community partner of the Wellness City Challenge with commitment to our community's wellness. Through the city's general plan, we support health and fitness for all members of our community. We promote good planning to preserve and enhance healthy community design for walkability, parks, open space, trails, recreation, and arts programs. Healthy children are the foundation of a healthy community, and the Wellness City Challenge has partnered with our school district and every school in the city of Walnut Creek. School children are learning that education, good nutrition, and exercise are building blocks for a healthy life. I have enjoyed, along with my city council colleagues, walking with school children, dancing with kindergartners, and hula hooping even with children. As we all learn how we can have fun together while getting healthier and stronger. The Wellness City Challenge is an important community partnership, one that can make a positive difference in the lives of our citizens. By working together, we can successfully meet the challenge. So tonight's champion citizen, Cindy Gershon, has been described as a force of nature, and anyone who comes into contact with her would no doubt agree. Cindy Gershon moved to Walnut Creek in 1974 and has been tending to the community's needs ever since. In 1981, she opened the Sunrise Cafe and Bakery, baking her own breads and pastries. She expanded her business to include Sunrise Catering and Sunrise Bistro. At the same time, she expanded her family with 3 children, all born and raised in Walnut Creek. 2 years ago, Cindy melded her passion for food with her passion for health. She pulled together a wide range of community groups and collaborators, including, so far, 2 Walnut Creek mayors and the entire city council, and issued a challenge to all of Walnut Creek to join her in pursuing a healthier lifestyle. More than 10,000 people, from kindergartners to senior citizens, have already accepted that challenge. But why tell you about Cindy and the Walnut Creek Wellness Challenge when I can show you? Please stay tuned for a look at the Walnut Creek Wellness Challenge and the force of nature behind it.
Because taking the first step is nearly an impossible challenge. There is a remarkable movement going on in the Bay Area community of Walnut Creek. It's called the Wellness City Challenge. And even today, in its infancy, the project has become a dynamic, positive action plan, uniting the community on a foundation of health and wellness. To date, over 10,000 families have been directly involved, and many times this are lined up to join in. The concept is to create a viable wellness action plan for one city, Walnut Creek, and then to share the plan with other cities. It began with grade school children walking around the track at lunch. Their reward for each lap, frozen fruit. With a remarkable 80% participation over time, children completed their marathon 26 miles. Professional athletes joined in to inspire the kids, as well as the mayor of Walnut Creek, who walked with the children and personally handed out the commendations. The Wellness Challenge also prepared pancake breakfast for thousands of seniors and walked with them as well. Cindy Gershon, the energetic leader of the Wellness City Challenge, produced over a dozen local health and cooking TV shows, and she worked with the
Nile restaurant to add a healthy Wellness Challenge Child's Edition to the menu, which Ilfernile gladly accomplished. The Wellness City Challenge worked with the talented and enthusiastic staff and student chefs from Diablo Valley College, bringing healthy additions to the college menu. Crossing many school district lines, a feat unto itself, the Wellness City Challenge began with the Breakfast Club at high schools. Providing a healthy breakfast to thousands of students and faculty. On May 30th, 2006, the Wellness City Challenge held its first annual event at the JCC in Walnut Creek. With the help of dozens of generous sponsors, countless volunteers, and hundreds of high school students, thousands of families participated in a day of health and wellness that was truly spectacular. The nearly impossible first step has been taken. And now the Wellness City Challenge, against all odds, is poised to take its next successful steps.
Cindy Gershon, will you join me at the podium? Citizenship Award to Cindy Gershon for her inspiration and perspiration in creating the Walnut Creek Wellness City Challenge and for her tireless efforts in helping to promote a healthier lifestyle for our residents. Thank you, Cindy. Thank you so much. Maybe you can tell us a little bit about the November 12th event or anything you want to about it.
Well, I think I'm going to have to get them to help me out. You know, there's nothing like having a great team. Come here, Carolyn.
Speak into the mic.
Having a great team. And I look here and, oh my goodness, I'm overwhelmed. Thank you all. I see nothing but friends up here. Yeah, what an amazing city we live in. Oh my goodness. And we have another event, so I'm going to pitch it right now. Walk in celebration. It's a 3 and a 5K walk on November 12th. This city is amazing. It has been so easy to pull this together. I have a city council that's amazing. Gary, Paul, all these. I mean, these are my friends. This is my community, and everybody should be this lucky to live in Walnut Creek. And I know I have a great team that I've worked with. And there hasn't been anybody that said no. I don't know how they can say no, because it's about making a better community, and especially with this city council. Did I miss anything other than everything? Please come and join us. It's amazing. We have 18 schools that are involved. All of the schools, we don't care if you're a private or public, we're pulling this thing together. We've got roster and the seniors working with us. That's what makes a great city, is it has great heart. We're more than just the buildings and the shopping. We have an amazing city that we live in that's vibrant and growing. And my saying is, if you're not growing, you're going. So we're growing and we're pulling together, and thank you so much. I'm going to miss you, but you'll be out there.
I will. So let's talk about it. It's November 12th.
November 12th.
At what time?
It starts at 7 a.m. We have an interfaith service happening with a rabbi and minister and a priest. And then at 7:30 we have a free healthy breakfast for anyone that shows up. And it's been sponsored by Marriott's, Whole Foods, and myself, Sunrise Bistro. Then we have a pep rally, and we'll have live music. There's a band of dads from Foothill that are going to be doing like a slam. And
Uh-oh.
And then at 9 a.m. we'll have a 3 and a 5K walk, and then a stroll for people that are in a stroller or a walker that want to go around them. And Todd Tremble and Leo, they're the best, and they represent your Parks and Rec, and they have been just going through all this stuff with us. And we have a wellness fair that'll be till 11 o'clock. So join us, come out there and be part of it, walk. I'm sure you guys will all be there so they can walk with you. And Gary, thank you, because guys are all in line, you know. Area over there. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Anything else that I
Well, watch for our magazine that Caroline just put together coming out.
You want to step to the microphone, please?
Watch for our magazine that Caroline Coles just put together for us, and it's telling you about what's going on in each of the schools and other community participants who are doing things towards health in our community.
Okay, if you could use that mic, apparently the one at the podium.
It's
is
about
not working.
responsibility and accountability, and all these schools have their page, and you can read what they're doing at all the schools around health and nutrition and exercise, what the city's doing, parks and rec. So look for our magazine. It'll be delivered from the Contra Costa Times, and it'll come out on the Saturday before, on the 4th, the 4th of November. So, and if you want a booth, you're welcome, and you can donate, you can come and help, you can walk with us, and we'd like everybody involved.
Who they contact if they want to become involved?
You'll contact Wellness City Challenge and Kendra. She is Stand Up Kendra. She is our party coordinator.
All right. Do you have a website or a phone number?
Yes, we have a website, and it is our phone number is 943-7862. Our website is wellnesscitychallenge.com. All of our information is up there, and we would welcome everybody's help.
Thank you.
Support. Thank you.
Thank you, Cindy Gershon. Thank you for being so terrific. Okay, we're checking the microphone. See if it's
Testing.
Yes.
Okay, very good. Okay, thank you. All right, next on the agenda, we have a wonderful presentation that we're looking forward to hearing from on a regular basis, Joe Campbell, president of the Contra Costa Water District. Welcome, Joe.
Thank you, Mayor Kathy. You know, the mic wasn't working for Cindy there for a while, and people at home would probably wonder why she had tears in her eyes is because she knew I was next. So for those at home that don't know, that's what that was about. Mayor Kathy, before I get started, I want to just tell you how much I appreciated working with you, and I'm going to miss you leading the council. And as a personal note, I couldn't leave tonight without saying that. And you and your husband, Jerry, have just been fine friends over the years, and we're going to continue to be friends. It's just going to be in a different situation. And I'm sorry you leave the council, but I want to tell you how much I really appreciate your service and all the time that we spent together on matters of community interest, and thank you very much. The other thing I wanted to mention is, before I start on a few thoughts I have about the Water District with you, is the Water District tomorrow night has on their consent calendar a resolution for Phyllis as well. So I thought it was interesting. I walk in here tonight and see yours, and Phyllis has been very interested in water for a long, long time. And she served on the Las Vaqueros Executive Committee when the Measure W was voted on in the late 80s, and that lady's been around water a bit. And what makes it kind of interesting, this is the first resolution ever to a private citizen in Walnut Creek on the Water District. The Water District uses those very sparingly. They usually give it to public officials that have done great things with water. She's the first private citizen to receive a resolution of on consent tomorrow night, so I'm glad to say that. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about, you know, how if you think about water districts and how these things get started to begin with, there was a time that people went down to the river and they gathered the water with buckets, or there's one picture there depicts that the little girl's using the pump and she carries it back to the house in the bucket, and that's how it used to be. And people had windmills, and somebody one day got an idea. Listen, why don't we build a flume? And that on the upper right of that photo there is one of those such things. And the district to this day still has a flume. It's the Contra Costa Canal that starts way out by the San Joaquin Contra Costa County line, east of Antioch, comes some 55 miles in through the interior of the Central Valley, and eventually terminates in Martinez. So that flume is still there. And as things grow, the district is no longer a little town. It got to be real big, and the green that you see there depicts the size of the district today. There's 500,000 people in that district now. And so somewhere along the line, the community had to get together and say, listen, if we're going to hire some of the townspeople to maintain the maintenance on that flume and the other things that they do, we probably better appoint 5 people to go down there and watch after the monies that we've collectively put together and put into that water system that we've brought into our town. And I'm one of those people. And also tonight, as my colleague John Berg, which is one of those people. John lives on the edge of Concord, and he represents all of Pleasant Hill, a little piece of Walnut Creek, and there's 4 of us that represent Concord. So this district has really grown. And so this little district is no longer the little dusty town where somebody pumps the water through a little pump where it just has a phone come into town so you can get your water that way, and it's really grown. Well, if the district's going to do that, then if they don't know why they exist, they probably shouldn't. So like the city, the district years ago developed a mission statement. Once a year, the board goes away to a retreat, and they validate the reasons that they exist, and the mission of the district is to get water out there, and high-quality water, and reasonable supply at a reasonable cost, and at the same time protecting the environment. So the district, as I said, they go away to retreat every year, and they validate that. I want to point out to you, too, that neither John or I work for the district. We're not public employees. We're not on the payroll. We live in the neighborhood. We have neighbors. We pay our water bills just like you do. The district is funded through water bills. It doesn't collect a property tax. It operates by the money that it collects from the water sale. And, of course, if you don't use any water, you don't pay any water bill. So that's pretty much how it works. And now the district is, that on the right side of the picture there, those are ozone generators. They look like an oversized iron one. The district doesn't use any chlorine anymore. They used to disinfect with chlorine when this flume system built and it started delivering water to people's homes. And now you can turn on your tap in that house and you get the water right there. It's disinfected with ozone. The bottom left side is showing some of the deep filter buds, and what happens there is the water enters from the flume or the canal, if you will. The ozone comes in contact with the water, and that's how they disinfect it. The message that I want to leave with you tonight, because the district has grown to the way that it has with 500,000 people now, it used to be when the little dusty town, you could get together with the town, and the 5 people that have been appointed to look after this water agency could gather up everybody in town, tell them how it's going. And so I'm down here tonight to tell you how it's going and whether or not they're getting the job done. They or they, I'm a me. I'm a citizen. I'm not a they. I'm not a we. I'm not a us. I'm not an our. I'm a citizen. And so I want to let you know that at least in the 15 years that I've been there, and it's actually been before that there's not once that you've turned your tap on that water hasn't come through. And you remember Y2K, we're always worried about that and what's going to happen. Well, there's water tanks that are out in the neighborhood, and the treated water is treated with that ozone disinfectant. It winds up in the neighborhood, and it's gravity fed down to your house. So when you turn that tap on, that's where that water comes from. I thought about this summer. You know, we had the heat wave, and it really, really strained the district's resources. What citizens aren't aware of is the district has some truck-mounted generators. They have some permanent generators in different places. They lost their power, too. I lost my power in my house 3 times, one time for 11 hours. Not one water district customer turned their tap on if the water didn't get through there, and people aren't aware that the employees are out there on the weekend getting these generators moved around on the trucks and making sure the pumps was getting the water back in the neighborhoods, and it all worked. I lost telephone, I lost cable TV, but we didn't lose water. So I want to let you know that they're getting it done. And we're watching them, we're looking after them, and they're getting it done. There's other threats, too. We all know about the threat of the levees, and the district's sole source of water is the Delta. And if the levees fail, they have a problem, which is one of the reasons that Las Vaqueros was built. And so all of that transfers to liability. Now, this next slide, these are some of the major improvements that's been done since it was that little dusty gravel town district. These are things that have occurred in my tenure. There's been the Las Vaqueros Reservoir, which you're all aware of. It was a $500 million bond authorization to sell bonds to build that reservoir out there. Just to remind you that the Delta is a very dirty place at times. And it's like, the analogy would be the base of the Mississippi River. New Orleans has a water quality problem. They're at the bottom of a 1,600-mile river. All the stuff runs down there. They have a water quality problem, and that's what's starting to happen to the Delta. I shouldn't say started happening. It's been happening for a long time, and it's getting worse and worse. So there are times that it will clean itself out when the snow melt comes. It cleans the Delta out. So the reservoir was built to take the clean water, put it in the reservoir, use it later in the year where the Delta quality deteriorates. There's been $120 million, that MPP stands for multipurpose pipeline. that the canal was scheduled to run out of capacity in 1999, and the district had to find a way to supplement that because of the growth. And the demand is probably a better word. It's not just growth. The refineries take a lot of water, too, that has to gravity feed for a very long way before it gets to them. There's been the Bowman upgrade. The Bowman is the name of an old district president who was there many, many years ago. And the treatment plant is where those ozone generators are located. There's two of those treatment plants. And then the project underway right now is a $90 million alternative intake project. The district's going to move the intake yet further inland. Even though they're not going to need it for a few years, they're not going to wait until they have to move it before they do move it. And so they're working on getting that done now. And then there's been $100 million spent on system reliability. That's everything from the generators I mentioned to you and other things. I won't get into the detail. And even all those things have been done. This is important. I told you the district doesn't collect property tax. It sells water. Yeah, this chart is to depict for you what inflation has been over a decade and what has happened to the water rates over a decade. When the board hired the new city manager, or the district manager 14 years ago new, one of the things that we told him, and it was in his performance plan, we wanted the water rates at or below inflation, so that's just a little performance there. Again, I want to report to you that they're getting it done. There's no backup for this slide here. I wanted to talk to you just a little bit about security. I'm not going to talk about it in great detail, and there's no supporting other than just the oral comments I'm going to make about it. In the time that we live in right now, I know my neighbors have been concerned, is the district secure? They've asked that question. The board has asked the staff to get into the security business, and they are. To give you a couple examples, it wasn't long ago that some kids went out to one of these reservoirs in the hills that I told you about. By the way, most of them are underground. You can't see them. And with the diagram topography, you're able to bury those tanks in the hills so they're not eyesores. But there were some kids that went out, and in between their swimming activities, they were drinking beer. And they thought it would be a good idea to open up the lid and go swimming in one of those tanks. And the water district does have its own patrol system, which I won't talk about how that works, but I will tell you that the local police got them before the district patrol got there. It took them about 10 minutes, and the local police had them first. I don't want to talk about how they knew they were there, how they went about that, but those kind of things are in place. There's also a grant the district is working off right now with the NASA people, same people that launched the spacecraft. And there is in the system, there's a little device that is an automated arm, if you will, and it can actually turn a tap on, take a sample of water, put it in a vial. It can conduct a water quality test on it, and the people that monitor 24 hours a day the water quality will know the result of that test. I won't talk about how many they are or where they are or how often they're used, but I'd like you to know that they're there. The district also changes its security as the nation's security changes. If there's a code yellow, there are certain things that the district does with a plan that's approved by the Homeland Security that they work with. And some visible things you can see that I can talk to you about very openly. There's times that you'll see guards on the dam, and Sheriff Rainey provides some of the security out there too, by the way. And there's Roop, yes. Old Sheriff Rainey's.
Sheriff Rainey.
Rainey's son, Warren, the big son. So the sheriff provides some of the security out there, but those kind of visible things I can talk to you about. And so I'd like to know that. So the whole idea is that little dusty town is supposed to get water out of that tap every time you turn it on, and I'm reporting to you that they're getting it done, and the board is happy with its staff, and it's organized the way they want it, and the water's being delivered, and the rates are being held down. So if you have any questions, I'll be glad to take them. Thanks for having me. I'm glad to report to you what's going on.
Thank you very, very much, President Joe Campbell. We have questions from Counsel.
No, doing a good job.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.
Thank you very much. We appreciate bringing up to date. Yeah, we do have a question.
No, I don't have a question necessarily, but I do like to, when we talk about water, put things in perspective. When you look at the significant infrastructure costs and investments that CCWD makes, and as well as for the other side of town, East Bay Municipal Water District, or Utilities District, and the significant operational costs you have. And then I ask you to go home tonight and look at your utility bills. And water is our lifeblood. not only individually but for our state, and compare what you're paying for water, high-quality water, reliable water, as it relates to, your cable TV bill or some other bills. And it is remarkable what you, Mr. Berg, and Mr. Campbell, and the rest of your board have done. So I truly thank you a lot.
Well, Gary, thank you for that, but that's what we're there for. And seriously, we are citizens. We live in the neighborhood, and we feel as passionate about it as you do. Thank you for your comment.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for coming. We appreciate being brought up to date. Next on the agenda is the consent calendar. Does anyone wish to pull any item off the consent calendar?
Mayor Hicks, I'm not going to pull item K, which is the report from ABAG on the regional housing needs, but to bring it to your attention and to, however, make one comment that was not in the materials you received. Do you want me to do it now or at the end of the consent calendar?
Why don't you go ahead and make the comment after we finish. And I would like to pull item E on endorsement of Measure L just for a comment and in support. And I will make, actually I won't pull it. I will make my comments after we pass it as well. So do I hear a motion?
I would move approval of the consent calendar.
Second. All right. Does anyone from the audience care to address the council on any item on the consent calendar? If so, please step to the microphone. Okay. Seeing none, I will bring it back to the council. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay. Motion passes. And let's see, first E.
First is E. Why don't you do E?
I wanted to just point out the importance of Measure L on the November 2006 ballot, which would establish a countywide urban limit line pursuant to the measures of Provision J, which the voters approved in 2004. And by approving Measure L, if it passes countywide and if Walnut Creek voters approve Measure L, we then will have a identified urban limit line throughout the county. And we do impress upon the voters how important approving Measure L is so that we in the city will be able to have our return to source transportation funds that all of the voters voting yes on Measure J approved. So it's the next step, and we encourage everyone to vote for Measure L on the November ballot. And moving it back then to Ms. Regalia.
Okay. Thank you. I'm sure you've heard us discuss before, every 7 years the State of California Department of Housing and Community Development prepares a new regional housing needs assessment and decides, in effect, from the state, from Sacramento, how many new housing units are going to be needed over a 7-year period. It's usually 7 years, but it sometimes varies slightly, within the state of California to keep up with the housing needs. So they then ask each regional planning agency, ABAG is one of them in the state, all large areas have such an organization, is then given the numbers that the state is prepared to distribute to cities and counties. The numbers are not available yet, but the process has started. And I have been meeting as a member of that committee now for the last couple of months with ABAG staff and people from throughout the region. That's the 9 Bay Area counties, members of city and city council members, board of supervisors members, and many staff members from these various agencies to talk about what factors we will be looking at as we look at distributing the numbers in this coming session. And I'll point out that for a while they were just distributed on the basis of housing needs, and that is not just houses, it's households is how the state counts. In addition, we've been looking at what that population is, that would be within the households, but also the employment. Putting housing in one part of the Bay Area and employment centers in the other is creating many of the traffic problems that everybody complains about. So we're looking at a number of different formulas that we may be using as we proceed through the process. So that is what is on our consent calendar, simply for my fellow counselors and anybody else who's interested to take a look and see what some of the things that are being considered. But what I did not put in the packet and what I wanted to comment on this evening is the fact that up to now, cities have been responsible for some of the housing or household needs within their sphere of influence, but that is actually within the county. And a sphere of influence is, in effect, what a city's ultimate city boundaries would be, but it's not under their control. And one of the large areas here that many of you may be familiar with is the Pleasant Hill BART station. That is in Contra, Costa County, but the sphere of influence of Walnut Creek. Now, up to this period of time when we're starting this process, the city has been responsible for some of those units, but we have no say in the zoning. We have no say in what standards they're going to use for development. We have, in effect, no say but responsibility. Now, that simply doesn't make any sense to most of us. In addition, Walnut Creek, like many cities that are more than recently formed cities, have pockets of county within them, unincorporated areas that are within our city. And we may be looking at something on our map that where we would say this is almost downtown. This is a very good place to have some higher density housing, not high rises, but higher density, more than 2 or 3 units to the acre. And the county has approved a big McMansion. We have no control over that. So I've raised this point at every single one of those meetings, and we did get the attention finally of somebody from Housing and Community Development. So I just wanted to inform my fellow counselors who've been complaining about it and some people in the community that we're trying very hard to see that counties are not all, that cities are not all required to do this. There are counties in the state of California where any development within the county immediately goes into a city. The reason it doesn't happen here is that the county government is relying on the funding that they're getting both from the development fees and from the property tax to pay their bills. So they would give us the property, but none of the taxing mechanism to pay for the services. So that's why we have not simply marched in and taken over. The county has the authority to set how much it is willing to share. And in this county, so far, it is close to zero. So anyway, we want you to know we are pursuing it, and if you have any questions, I would be happy to try to answer them.
Are there any questions at this time?
No. Eventually, they have to say enough.
Yeah, and that is the other point that we have been making. How many more rounds of this do you think we can make? Many of the cities in the Bay Area, like Walnut Creek, consider themselves pretty well built out. We do not have a lot of vacant land. There are areas in the Bay Area that do, that areas that they're anticipating their city to grow that is actually vacant land. It is not, they may have set aside agricultural land, they may have set aside open space, but they've also set aside areas for housing, and they should be getting it. But there are areas like this that can only accommodate so much. We are having some higher density downtown kind of thing, but there is a point from beyond which we feel we cannot go. And tied to that, however, is, as we heard earlier, water. One of the key things in life, period. You have to have adequate water. How long can we continue an increasing population? So these are things that we all should be thinking about, not just this council. Today, the 300,000th person became a citizen or was born here in the United States of America. 300 million. It's taken us only 39 years to come from 200 million. 100 million in 39 years. The next 100 million in this country will be in 37 years, I was told, maybe even sooner. In our own area, we will be looking at 2 million more people in the San Francisco Bay Area by the year 2035. Where are they going to go? Or are they going to be here? And when you say, well, don't let any more people come, let me remind you that half of that population increase is us. Those of us who already live here, we're living longer, we have children, we have grandchildren. So it's not just them, it is us. And we better start thinking about how we're going to be dealing with this, because this is just one little piece. Thank you.
Well, I appreciate the report because ABAG, the Association of Bay Area Governments, is the agency that has been assigned, if you will, by the state the responsibility to assign the various housing allocations to
what, 104 different
There's 110 entities
in the Bay Area. And the state is the agency that mandates these housing allocations, and Association of Bay Area Governments, and Gwen is former president. I want to thank her on behalf of the city of Walnut Creek, but also all 19 cities in the county, because she is one of 2 people representing the Contra Costa Mayor's Conference in these ABAG meetings having to do with these allocations. And I really appreciate all the hard work you've been to and all the meetings you've attended. My goodness, it must just be countless. But I know that you're working very hard to make some common sense out of our assignment of the including the unincorporated area, which really makes no sense whatsoever. And we appreciate that.
Thank you. Can I add one other thing that I think is important? When we talk about getting the assignment of these housing units, at this time there is no mandate that they be built. And I want to make that very clear. Nobody says you are required to build whatever number of units. What you are required to do, however, is show in your general plan where those units could go. That is what the state is asking. And I would point out, if you do not show in your general plan where the number of units that you've been assigned will go, you can be sued by housing advocates who up to now have won those suits against different cities and counties in the state of California. So it's not just, well, we don't have to do it. There is a requirement that we find the way to do it, but there's not the requirement that we find the way to build it. One other thing, because ABAG staff and all the people that I mentioned on this committee from throughout the Bay Area are working to do the best we can for each community. We all have different needs, but we all have similar needs. And so we are trying to do this in as fair a fashion as we possibly can, and ABAG, in effect, is on our side. During the last round, they talked the state down from the number of units we've been assigned, saying there's no way that that can be accomplished. So we are working together, and I want you to know that, particularly my colleagues here, that we are doing our best to have a reasonable number assigned to the Bay Area. Yes.
Yes, Miss.
Can I make a technical comment? We're having a little problem in TV land with feedback, and Matt Bolander, our Comcast representative, has asked if we've all pushed our microphones away a little bit, just to give a little more space, and it'll sound better out in TV land.
All right. Change from the norm.
Yes,
Yeah,
it is,
all
it
right.
is.
Sorry, so I'm probably blasting away there.
All right.
So- Okay. Hope everybody understood.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you for allowing this.
Delia. And next on the agenda is a consent calendar.
We
I'm
did
sorry,
that.
it's public communications. If anyone from the audience would like to address the council on any item that is not on the agenda, please approach the microphone and we'll see if it works. You will have 3 minutes. Please state your name and address. And thank you.
So we'll see. It is
Yes.
working now.
Good evening.
Good evening, council members. I'm Cindy Silva, Executive Director of the Library Foundation. And I just wanted to tell you tonight that after a summer of reading and 10 community-wide events, the city's first ever One City, One Book program concluded last night, and it concluded with a bang. More than 300 community members attended the cultural extravaganza that was held at the Los Lomas Theater, and that's a packed house. I do believe it only allows for 296 people, if I remember what the fire marshal's sign says on the wall. It has been a fun summer and a fun fall, and I want to thank the city for your support of the program, and also want to recognize the community groups that helped put this together. The American Association of University Women, the Walnut Creek Library Foundation, the Friends of the Walnut Creek Library and the Friends of the Ignacio Valley Library, the Rossmore Library, the Contra Costa Times, and the City of Walnut Creek. Particularly want to recognize Mayor Hicks, who was a member of the fashion show last night at Los Lomas. And I thought you were going to wear the sari tonight so we could see it again
As long as you
on
don't
television.
ask me to do the Bollywood dancing here, that's good.
Last night's evening was hosted by Lynn Carey, who is the Contra Costa Times book club editor, and I hear she did a wonderful job. Mayor Hicks was in the fashion show along with other members of the community, and it was music and dancing and a wonderful event. I also want to tell you that It's not just the fun things. Our book discussion groups were so successful, we had a packed house for Jessica Aguirre at lunch 2 weeks ago. And then we had a full house for dinner last Tuesday night at the Sargon restaurant. Everyone enjoyed the Indian food as well as a very interesting table discussions. Then last Thursday night, the Civic lecture on immigration and cultural assimilation by Bill Hing from UC Davis. Again, another packed house at the library, more than 80 people. And then, of course, last night's event. I think what this tells us is it won't be the first time. It's not a one and only event. We will be doing it again, and we look forward to selecting another book probably in the spring for next year. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you, and I had the privilege of serving on that committee, and I did attend a number of the events, and I had the privilege of introducing Professor Hing from UC Davis, and it was very, very interesting. But I think what was really interesting is the book discussions themselves. The name of the book was The Namesake by the last name of the author is Lahiri. And it really caused a lot of interesting discussions throughout the community that I think led us to think more about our own lives, our own families, our own family histories, and maybe even our names and where our names came from and what they mean to us. So it was a great discussion, wonderful bringing together the community. I made a lot of new friends, and I had the experience of, yes, wearing a beautiful blue sari for the first time in my life. And it was a wonderful, wonderful exchange. I thank everyone, all of the sponsors, and thank you for participating. Anyone else care to speak to the council under public communications?
These are really qualifications for me, probably really quick, so for me to retire, but I just remembered as a American, so I got there and came here. I want to also reaffirm and confirm my congratulations to Miss Roth. She's my understanding she was here for 2 years. But she survived, okay? And also I'd like to thank Joe about his water district and so I'm also involved with the cemetery district. And for the general public, California has over 25 to 2,700 special districts. And the water, Contra Costa water is a special district. And we're very important, so we must not lose track of the fact that special districts in California help out with irrigation, cemeteries, sewers, and everything else. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anyone else care to address the council under public communications? Okay. If there's anyone else that would like to speak after this, please come up to the side of the room so you'll be in line. Thank you.
Thank you, Counsel, for listening to me. I'm here to talk a little bit about Proposition 86, and I hope I'm in the right corridor or lineup.
Your name and address, please.
My name is Jim Larkin, and I am from Moraga. I represent the American Cancer Society, and I've read so many things here recently in some of the local papers that seem to point toward raising your lever to a no position on Proposition 86, which is the tobacco tax. I want to read, and I'm going to read from this list because I think it's important that I don't understate or misstate any of these points. Because raising taxes is one of the most effective ways to prevent children from starting to smoke and reduce costs all of us pay for smoking-related illnesses, you must pull the lever yes. What else will voting yes on 86 do for our children and our grandchildren? Frankly, in my opinion, it's a no-brainer. Number one, currently 4,000 kids per month are starting to smoke. 4,000 a month under 18. Currently, Proposition 86 will raise the cost of cigarettes about $2.60 a pack, which means that we will follow the state of New York in terms of the highest cost per pack of cigarettes. Now, you can look at all of the negatives and talk about the fact that the black marketers are going to come in. Anything that's done for the good we'll always find some way to counteract it. But if you use that as the leverage in order to, frankly, defeat a proposition against the big tobacco companies, then we're all, I think, headed down the wrong mainstream. Research shows that increasing tobacco taxes is the best way to stop kids from smoking. And as a matter of fact, for every 10% increase in the cost of cigarettes, it gives us a 70% return. In other words, 7% stop smoking. Now, if you and I were able to make 70% on the money we invest, we'd be doing quite well. In addition, an additional 700,000 children will be prevented from smoking if this proposition passes, and will no longer become adult smokers. In addition, another 180,000 youngsters will be prevented from dying in the long run, and then another 180,000 adults will also be provided with the same result.
Thank you.
So you're looking at 700,000 and 300,000, or about 1 million people.
Thank you for coming. Thank you. Your time's up. Thank you very much. Anyone else care to speak under public communication? All right, seeing none, we will move on to next item is a public hearing. The Civic Pride Grant Program funding recommendation for 2006-2007 budget cycle. And we have Sandy Kendall from our city staff.
Good evening, Mayor Hicks and members of the council. My name is Sandra Kendall. I am the staff administrator of the Civic Pride Grant Program, and I am here tonight on behalf of the grant committee, council members Regalia and Skrell, to request the full council's adoption of funding for the 2006-2007 Civic Pride Grant Program. This program provides funding opportunities to our community and their projects that will enhance the amenities and the quality of life in Walnut Creek. For the past 18 years, the City Council has approved appropriations from the general fund to support this program. This year, the city received 9 applications requesting a total funding amount of $116,175. Following the first public hearing on September 14th, the grant committee reviewed all of the requests and determined funding recommendations that totaled $71,775. The remaining balance of $3,225 will be retained in the Civic Pride Grant Program. Thank you very much, and if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them for you.
Are there any questions?
No?
All right.
You asked plenty of questions
Yes,
for the public hearing.
We did. We'll have an opportunity to ask further questions after the public hearing. All right, I will open the public hearing. Does anyone from the public care to address the council on the Civic Pride Grant recommendations? If so, please come to the microphone, state your name and address, and you'll have 3 minutes.
Again, Madam Mayor, members of the council, I want to thank the council for hopefully approving this appropriation for our oven. The oven was moved to our site at the Rink. It showed us by our people, not perfectly know, but it was donated to us in conjunction with the Trolley Development Company. It came from the Chairman of the Ranch. So when we get that in place and working, and we hope it'll be working, it'll be part of the average program. And I saw the slide today and go after Joe because Joe had one of the water pumps we got, so I'm going to get some technical knowledge from Joe. But I really appreciate it, and everything you've done for us is for the good of the community. It's not just selfish for the society, it's for the good of the community. Thank you.
Excuse me, while you're there, would you tell people who is going to be using this and some of the things that you anticipate being done with this oven? What kind of an oven is it? I mean, it's an expensive one.
Originally, it was an oven that they used in the ranch to bake bread. It appears to have been fired from underneath to get the bottom course hot. And that's the way Toscana Bakery used to Big French bread there at MacArthur Market and 40th Street. Anyhow, it's for the outreach program we have. We participate with the school district. We get a series of third graders to come through, and that's will be part of the outreach program. We have the water tower with the tank on it. We have the courthouse, which is fitted with the old-fashioned beds so they can see how people live at the cruise. And so we hope it will be working and that we can actually bake some bread. So does that answer your question?
You're not going to put Cindy Gershon in a business, are you?
No, we'll probably give her some quality products that she can sell.
All right.
And we'll share the funds with the Historical Society.
Most of this that he's described is what young people, as they come on tours, will be learning about. But they're also looking at having some classes in bread making and baking that would be put on by the Historical Society that would be available to adults as well as young people. So we'll be looking forward to that.
That's correct. Again, thanks to the city for helping with the appropriation. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Apparently, we're still having microphone problems, and Ms. Olds, is that microphone working?
Yes, this one's working.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Good evening, Madam Mayor and council members. I'm Diane Longshore, representing the Walnut Creek Library Foundation. We would like to thank the council also for your serious consideration. Thank you. of the recommendation to give us a grant to reimburse us for the cost of the banners for the One City, One Book. You heard what a success that program was, and those banners did help to create an atmosphere of anticipation and excitement. It was one component, I think, of our successful spreading the word of a program that was well worth participation. The one thing that we'd like to ask is if we're supposed to pick those banners up. As you may recall, those banners were designed so we can use them in the future. Those will be used year after year. And we're just concerned about whether or not we need to store them. We know that they have been produced, put up, and taken down. But if we have to have them stored in the executive director's garage, we need to know about that.
As I recall, in looking at the information, the part of the, we'll have to confirm this, part of the cost of the printing and so on with the subcontractor included storage, or the city has storage somewhere. We'll get back to you.
No, I don't recall that.
We'll get back to you.
Your garage is looking pretty good, though.
Yes.
The price is right.
But again, thank you so much.
Okay, thank you very much. Any other speakers on this item? Okay. Yes, one more.
I'm Bob Britton. I'm representing the Open Space Foundation tonight, and I'd just like to speak in favor of our fencing project in North Lime Ridge. In the past parts of a fencing project, we've been trying to create an area for quail habitat, wildlife habitat in general. And what we've noticed in the recent past is that we even have some not exactly rare, but uncommon birds. The sorrel rails have appeared in these cattle ponds. Maybe they'll start mating there, I'm not sure. When you create a new wildlife corridor, there's no telling what'll show up. And I think we would love to be a partner with the city in seeing what we can do to improve the wildlife habitat in that part of the open space. It's heavily grazed, but it's a corridor to the South Lime Ridge area, which is really a wildlife habitat. So I appreciate your support on that measure.
Thank you. Any other speakers? Okay, we're still having sound problems, no? Okay. All right. Thank you for that. All right.
You know, we ought to introduce him. He's been up here so many times tonight. Kathy, would you have him introduce himself?
Yeah. This is from?
I am Matt with Comcast Cable, trying to correct our audio difficulties tonight.
Yes. This is the
I'm
man
the guy behind the curtain. Thank you.
He's the man behind the curtain, behind the camera that helps to broadcast this program every
The
week.
Wizard of Oz, yes. That's
Matt.
what he says.
He's really had to work tonight.
Yes. All right. Any other speaker? Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing. We'll bring this back to the City Council. And are there any questions, or do the committee members care to make any comments?
I have no questions. Again, we asked a lot of questions at the initial public hearing, and This year, as much, I've been doing this for several years now, and this year was probably more rewarding than years past because what we saw from the majority of the applicants was such a feeling of partnership. We have parlayed, if I can use that word, a very small investment to turn into a great investment for our community, be it the Downtown Business Association, with the Holiday on Ice, the Open Space Foundation, the Library Foundation, Historical Society, the list goes on. And that's what makes this community so great. We can do things just that make you feel good, and this is a good investment in our community. We could call this year perhaps the year of the banner. We talked about beautification. Of the 9 grants, 3 are related to banners, one for the Holiday on Ice, which you'll see along Civic and Ignacio Valley in California. Then 100 banners in downtown Walnut Creek, the new holiday banners that will be coming, I hope.
You have one that you could hold up?
Well,
Adriana's out there.
Actually, this is for the holiday banners, but this is the new banner design for downtown Walnut Creek, which will come up, I believe, Adriana, sometime in January. Yeah.
Very nice looking.
Very nice. And then the other banners have already been mentioned for the Library Foundation. So, again, I think Gwen and I were very happy with the conclusions.
Well, let me mention a couple of others. You've heard some that we are recommending that the council approve. Another was brought to us by the Life Garden. We will be paying for the development and printing of a Walnut Creek watershed map showing the various watersheds in Walnut Creek. And as you know, we're very interested in reopening the creeks that still exist with trails, et cetera. We will have been working here in the downtown area. That will be continuing. But this will give us information about some of the other watersheds and creeks that we may not be as familiar with. And on your walk, since we're all with the wellness community, and we also gave them some money for their upcoming year, you can be out exploring some of the creeks on foot, getting your miles in there. We also are, again, helping the Ruth Bancroft Garden. Although that is not a City of Walnut Creek garden, it is one of the most spectacular gardens anywhere and has been acknowledged by countries around the world. This garden by Mrs. Bancroft has been featured on television in several European countries. They've been in magazines in Europe as well. So we have a treasure right here in our own community, and we have given that garden small amounts from time to time to help them get it into better shape. This will help them complete their sound wall along Bancroft. And if you haven't been by there recently, you may note they have a new gate going into the garden, and the planting outside is just lovely, and they will be continuing to plant along that wall, so it will be even nicer when it's finished. You heard about the Open Space Foundation, I guess those are, and we heard about the Library Foundation and Historical Society. So those are the grants that we are making this year, and every one of them has a great deal of impact in this community. You heard what the One City, One Book banners did and how successful that program was. And for a first-year program, that is really quite remarkable. I was only able to attend one event, but the one I went to also was very well attended. And the discussion of the book was very good. So I hope you'll be happy with the decisions that we have made in terms of the applications that we had.
Thank you, and thank you for all the hard work the committee goes to have the hours-long meetings and reading all the material. We appreciate that.
I was going to say, stay away from it. This is hard because normally we sit like this to talk into them, and so this is retraining us, and we don't retrain very well.
Yeah.
But I wanted to just compliment the committee. This is one of those committees that you serve on that, yes, you get spend a lot of hours, but I think it's one of the most rewarding because you get to see what's going on in the community and and as you say, leverage the money, and you get a lot back for it. I think you guys did a great job.
Thank you. So do I hear a motion from this great
Before I
committee?
make the motion, most of the work is Ms. Kendall, so
Yes.
Senator Kendall, thank you. You've done most of the work.
Yes,
Really
she
have
is.
made it very easy for us. Thank you. With that, I would move to approve the Civic Pride Grant Committee's funding recommendations.
I'll second.
All right.
We can second our own.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank all of you for coming. I see many of you here tonight to support the nonprofit groups that you are working with. And really, Walnut Creek, I think, is an outstanding community for one great reason, because so many people volunteer and there are so many community partnerships. The city partners with so many of the nonprofits and volunteer groups. So thank all of you for making Walnut Creek a better place. We appreciate it. Moving on to the next item on the agenda, which is the consideration, item 5, community care facilities. Okay, wait, I'm sorry. People in the audience can't hear, so apparently the microphone is not working in terms of the internal.
Testing.
Okay, thank you.
My voice is just not loud enough to carry over to television land without it, huh? My name is Valerie Baroni, and I'm the Community Development Director in Walnut Creek. And I'm providing information to the council that was requested at a previous meeting. A while back, the council received a series of letters from residents on Viamonte expressing concern about community care facilities in their neighborhood, specifically ones that were geared towards caring for the elderly. And at that time, the council asked for more information on the state and federal regulations as well as local opportunities in addressing these kinds of concerns. In talking about community care facilities, it's important to recognize that community care facilities is a broad term intended to encompass all types of care facilities, such as child daycare, elderly daycare, care for disabled, whether it's mental or physical disabled people, and other types of special needs populations. And the state and the federal government have taken quite a bit of control in this area from local jurisdictions. At a very simple level, if a care facility provides services to 6 or fewer people, the state and the federal government insist that a community treat it just like a single-family residence, which means that you can't impose any regulations on the facility that you wouldn't impose on a single-family residential home that was occupied in a more traditional way. When you get above 7 members of a special need population in such a care facility, there can be opportunities for more control, but even then it's very complicated over which types of special needs are being served and how much more control you can exert. In general, there are some types of special needs populations that really relate more to, I'm trying to think of, developmentally disabled or kind of drug-dependent kinds of uses where there are some density controls that the state employs in permitting these homes. They need to honor these kinds of density controls or consult with the local jurisdiction about them before allowing them at a level denser than the regulations allow. So what does this mean for the city of Walnut Creek? It means that we actually have very little control on the types of homes that we get letters about most often. We have traditionally had residents express concern over elder care homes, and most recently that's certainly been the case. And the homes have been serving 6 or fewer, which means we treat them as a single-family home, which means that certain kinds of exterior changes may go through design review, but the actual use within the home gets no local control or local review. So what can the council do? There's a couple things we've put on the table for the council to discuss tonight. One is we could, try to work with the League of California Cities and other interested cities and try to influence state legislation using our lobbyists as well, remembering that influencing the state legislation doesn't change anything if we haven't influenced the federal legislation at the same time because both the federal legislation and the state regulations control us in this area. We can work within the laws that exist today, particularly as it relates to the density controls, and ensure and monitor that. It's a state requirement to meet those density controls, and the city, we're not involved unless the state's trying to issue a permit that's more dense than what they would normally allow. In my 4 years here, we've never received such a request, but we don't do any active monitoring on this, and we could work to do that if that was of interest to the council. We don't know that there's any problem in this area, but again, we don't monitor the state's actions, so I can't give you any factual information on it. And with that, that's pretty much the extent of my presentation. In your staff report, there was a copy of an article from the League of Cities magazine and some additional information. The city attorney's office worked very closely with us in trying to prepare this basic information for you tonight. So between us, we'll hopefully be able to answer questions that the council may have.
Thank you. Are there questions? Yeah. Yes. We have several. Go ahead, Ms. Rainey.
Yeah, I had asked us for this to be on the agenda because I think everybody appreciates the service that these homes provide, and it's not a matter of eliminating their existence, but trying to get a handle on the density issue or a clustering of them. Which definitely impacts, and it was interesting to me that the letter or the article from the League of California Cities magazine covered the same issues that we are concerned about. And so, do we know how many there are in our city? Do we have any way of knowing?
I'm looking for the city attorney.
And where they are. I mean,
certainly it is possible to get, I don't think we have a number for you tonight. When it comes to licensed facilities, we can certainly get that through the state. However, when it comes to unlicensed facilities, then we don't have any way of determining that.
Then on the clustering, because the complaints were coming in that the 2 and 3 and 4 were coming into a single neighborhood on one court, and that's the we'll get your testimony in a while, but at any rate.
And again, if in the instance, if this is Viamonte, that you're talking about a different one. If it's the elder care homes with 6 or fewer in the population that's being served, we treat it like we would treat any single-family home. So if a single-family home would be allowed to be there, this use is allowed to be there with no control from the city of Walnut Creek beyond density. And so they can actually cluster, and there is actually...
When you say beyond density, are you talking about population within the house when you talk density, or are you talking
No, I meant by clustering. I'm sorry, I'll use the term clustering.
All right.
Clearly, there's a variety of impacts that a cluster of these types of care facilities could have on a neighborhood. One, they tend not to have the same kind of life in terms of activity around them, and they tend to have slightly different designs. There's ramps, and and they're not owner-occupied by and large by the time you get to the second or the third in a cluster. The industry itself seems to, when one elder care facility is successful, if another home in that same area comes open, they often attempt to buy it or do buy it because then they can extend that same kind of service with less cost associated with it. So it's not an uncommon phenomena. It is, however, a phenomena that the local jurisdiction has no control over because, again, the state and the federal government, through fair housing laws, have made it clear that we can't treat them different than a single-family home.
Okay. And we will have an opportunity for the audience to speak in a moment. So, yes, Ms. Regalia.
Well, in your report, you have stated that we can have requirements for the 6 and under,
sorry. In your report, you stated that we can separate the child care facilities. We can have 300 feet minimum distance. Is that correct? And some of the other facilities where they're 6 and under, but we cannot specifically for elderly. And I don't understand that, because I think it does make, the whole idea of having these as in single-family residences, whether it's the elderly or young children or developmentally disabled, is so that they'll be in a neighborhood situation. But once you have them all grouped together, you've lost the neighborhood, you know, the whole reason for being there. So I fail to understand why state and federal law does not have that same sort of separation. I'm sure you know why, but
on that.
No,
I think the
what I'm
concern is
saying
there.
I'm sorry.
I agree with you that the concern is there, but the state and federal law is as it is, and perhaps the city attorney knows a more in-depth explanation, but I don't.
I wonder if we could have a definition here. It states in the report that the state law expressly states that the elderly care facilities cannot have a minimum distance limitation. Is that only state law, or is it also federal law?
Well, that's only state law. Federal law is only a very vague law, which simply says you must make reasonable accommodations in your zoning for any type of group housing for the, quote, handicapped. But it's the state law that specifically preempts the concentration requirements.
So if we were to communicate with someone on this and ask for consideration of change, it would be through the state law, not the federal law, of the distance issues.
Specifically on the distance issues, that's true. I mean, the problem with federal law is it is so broad and vague that somebody could still make the argument that to the extent that an elderly in a particular home meet the qualification of handicap, since obviously just being elderly, you are not necessarily meeting that federal definition of handicap. I appear to have quite a ways away. And so there may be some situations where even if state law were changed, there can be an argument that one is still discriminating against the elderly by imposing concentration requirements when you aren't having concentration requirements on, quote, non-handicapped groups living together.
Okay. You wanted to follow up on
Yeah, but don't you think, I think it's a matter of unintended consequences. I think that they, passed these laws saying, because, face it, for a while I could remember when you first were getting some of these in the residential areas, that nobody wanted them, and so I could understand, and so they passed this law, but now it has become a cottage industry, and as you said, somebody has a successful one, and so a house comes up, and they buy it, and it goes on until it is no longer a residential neighborhood, it's a business neighborhood.
Okay.
I almost hate to, this is perhaps speculation rather than based upon fact, but obviously at every level of government there's this balance that's having to be, that you have to strike between, on the one hand, allowing very important facilities, but on the other hand, allowing them only under conditions that aren't going to decimate neighborhoods. And frankly, at the local level, when we have neighbors coming in here, we tend to be more sensitive to those negative impacts, whereas once you get to the state or federal level, there's less of that sense of contact with the neighborhood. Plus, frankly, there are then, there's less of common citizens who are impacted by this appearing before legislators, and there are many more of the advocacy groups who are there. That is their one issue, and they're pounding away on these things, and that's why perhaps the balance gets out of skew at those levels.
All politics is local, is that what you mean? I think Mr. Scrum had his hand up.
A very quick question, maybe it's more of a clarification that can be, we have a nice packet full of information. When you're talking about care facilities, can you clarify, are these just during the day, or are people spending the night?
It can be both. When we're talking about the adult care facilities, they're usually 24-hour care facilities.
So they're boarding.
Yeah, I mean, the term community care facility in its broad sense refers to all, a child daycare center that's just daytime, as well as something that's 24 hours. And so the community care term is broad, but it can apply, in this case, particularly for adult care, it's 24 hour.
And that is then a licensed facility, though, if it's 24 hours.
I don't know that they all have to be licensed. I would ask the city attorney if he can answer that.
I mean, they are licensed when they require, when they are providing a certain level of care.
Certain level of, if they have medical abilities or capability or...
Yeah, that's essentially the care that's being provided.
In other words,
or if it's halfway houses for recovering alcoholics and addicts, then it's counseling that's provided.
I was just wondering, although my mother was in one in Roseville, it was licensed, but it was, she had Alzheimer's, I mean, basically, so it was sort of a protective care.
Yeah. Well, and under state law, in order to qualify for the preemption, you have to be licensed.
Okay.
Preemption meaning...
So conceivably, you can have a residential care home that's completely unlicensed and not providing care, but then state law doesn't preempt local regulation, and at least under state law, we can still regulate those. But again, we've got federal law that's also hanging over us, and we have had instances in the city, for example, where we have had the halfway houses that have not been licensed, and in fact are intentionally not licensed because then they have to comply with all the state requirements. But then under federal law, they are deemed individuals who are handicapped, and under federal law were preempted from being licensed. So it's, yeah, it's kind of a gotcha from both directions of the state law or federal law, depending upon whether they're licensed or not licensed.
Could I ask to follow up on that? Let's say you had a clustering of elder care facilities where they are not providing any medical treatment whatsoever, and they are only custodial care, and they are not licensed by the state. Then do we have the ability to have some local guidelines for site distance on that? Not if they're 7 or less.
Well, and then you kind of go to the little chart that we have on the staff report, bottom of page 2, top of page 3. If they are residential care facilities and the occupants meet the definition of handicapped under fair housing law, they are permitted by right under our code, as they are generally under law. On the other hand, if they don't meet the definition of handicapped, then you go up onto page 3 under the category of not permitted, and that would be a congregate living facility or a group residential. And those we simply don't permit in residential zoning. It's not a matter of concentration requirements. They simply aren't.
Would you define group residential? I look through all of this, but it says without a separate kitchen or bathroom. But in other words, a group residential would be, let's say that I decide I'm going to take in boarders and they're all over 65, and I take in 5 and me. That's okay?
Well, that would be considered then a group residential, and that is not permitted.
It's not permitted.
It's not permitted.
Supposing I only take in 1 boarder or 2, is that still not permitted?
Well, technically that's permitted. Not permitted. We do have.
I mean, because, I read through all this, I now understand it, and then I got back and I thought, what? It's...
And and the distinctions are horribly complicated, and honestly, it's not my fault. It's partly the statutes, but mostly the courts where we get inconsistent decisions. I mean, there used to be a time when every city would prohibit anybody from living in a residential area that was not a, quote, family, and family was defined as, mom, dad, and the 2.2 kids. Whereas the courts then overturned that and said, no, that's, discriminatory. You're defining family too narrowly, because you can have different types of families of just they're living together like a household unit, even though there's not a blood relationship, which seemed to make sense, but then all of a sudden it blows everything out of the water.
Everything.
And how do you distinguish between that kind of household versus the situation you're talking about, where you rent out a couple of rooms? And as a result, we now have a definition of family that's about this long.
Okay. Well, I have one other question. I think it's for Valerie. For places that have over 7 or 7 or more, do we have some control over how close they can be together?
Yes. If you look at a large family.
Yes, that's what but I wanted to be clear on that. So in other words, we can regulate how close they can be. We can't turn them down if they meet the licensing requirements. Is that correct? Wouldn't they have to have a license for 7 or more?
They would have to, I believe they would have to have a license for 7 or more. It gets down to also the distinguish between whether it's considered a residential care facility that meets the description or the definition of handicapped under the Fair Housing Act, which we did attach, because that definition is much broader than the average person would assume.
Yes.
If they fall into that category, we have no control over them in terms of density. If they don't fall into that category, then they would fall into, if they were less than 24 hours, either the large family daycare or the adult daycare. If they were 24-hour care, they would be considered congregate living facility or a group residential, and they wouldn't be allowed in a residential district. So again, it depends on the use and the characteristics unique to that use.
All right. Any other questions at this point? Well, we might have more after the public comment. And I will, before we open the public comment, I will say that we are very sympathetic to the need for these kinds of living arrangements. And we think of so many of our elderly parents now that have those kinds of needs. Well, our concern is the clustering of these, when they become a business and come into one street or one court, and they buy up 1, 2, and then a third house and convert them into care homes. So suddenly you have a street with ramps coming up to the front door. You have an area where the owners of the home don't live there, so they might not take care of the yard as well as they might otherwise, and other kinds of impacts. So it's not that we are not sympathetic, because it's very important to have the opportunity for these facilities, and we're just looking at how can we make sure that it's not a negative impact on any one neighborhood. And because of state and federal law, we are greatly limited in what we can do. But that's why we're having this discussion, so that we can, first of all, understand it better and have everyone else understand it better, and secondly, see if there's something more that we can do that would help in any way. So having said that, we will open the public comment, and if you'll come to the microphone and try to use it, stand back a little bit and say your name and your address, and you would have 3 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you. We have a couple of representatives for the neighborhood. I would like to pass this out to the members. I've given a copy to the City Council already prior to the meeting.
If you could say your name and address.
My name is Leonard Garfola. I'm a principal in a company called Arisa Consulting Group, which is headquartered here in Walnut Creek. I've served over 35 years with the federal government. I know something about law, though I've been in law school. I'm not a practicing lawyer, but I do know something about federal law. Let me make a suggestion, first of all. I would like to see a legal analysis done by counsel on this issue, citing the cases, and I will have my son, who's also a lawyer, go through it. We do know something about federal law. And when people start talking about technicalities and complexities, then we need to have not only a study, but a study that answers what are those technicalities and what are those complexities. I would like, and I make a request, and I'll do it in writing if necessary, I would like to get a copy of everything the council has received with respect to this issue. including Valerie's notes, or what she was working off of. I don't know if that's got privacy information in it, but it seems to me if the council has it, I should have it and my community should have it. Let me say a couple of things. My wife and I have lived in Walnut Creek for over 20 years. We raised our son here. We love the community. We think the council and Walnut Creek do a wonderful job. We are not radicals. We are not people who have picked up on an issue that is anti-elderly, anti-children, anti-rehabilitation of people. We have no difficulty with that. What we do have difficulty with is my company has a license in Walnut Creek. I pay, like all other profit businesses, for-profit businesses, a tax on my gross revenue. What these entities are, which have 6 or fewer, they are for-profit organizations. They are organizations which have come into the community, and this community doesn't even know how many there are. I can tell you how many there are in my neighborhood. There are about 9 in a 2-block area, and 2 on my court. That's a court with 5 residences. I can assure you, if they were on your court, you would be a little upset also. Let me say a couple of other things. And I'd be happy to provide Valerie and the City Council with the addresses of those care facilities. Let me take 30 seconds.
30 seconds.
30 seconds to conclude. I request that the City Council exercise its zoning powers and its power to have for-profit organizations licensed by the City of Walnut Creek, so that the City of Walnut Creek will know how many of these facilities exist and what types they are. They create traffic problems for people, and they create other, and I won't get into it right now, but I'd be happy to talk to council at another date. Sorry to take up so much of your time.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Excuse me, this is a business meeting, and we are not clapping after the speakers, and that will help us move things along so we have time for the next speaker. Thank you.
Lisa Sony in Walnut Creek. Thank you. I may need some water. Bill, do you want to talk for a minute while I get my breath? Thanks. You want to go?
That's okay with me.
Okay.
I'll go on.
You start the clock over, please. Thank you.
My name is Bill Booth. I live on Normandy Lane, and when we first built our home in the early 70s, it was a single-family residence. The image of our neighborhood has changed drastically, and I confirm that we're in the same neighborhood, by the way, so I don't have to repeat that. Our concern, and I go on record, I'm not against elderly care facility, but in our neighborhood we are inundated with a business where my next door neighbor is now a facility, left-hand corner is a facility, right-hand corner is a facility, and my home is in the middle. And I take objection to the fact that they are not regulated. When I talked to the state board in Oakland, I was told brazenly, those are homeowners' decision, and it's none of your business what they do with it. And I find that very offensive. And there are no requirements. I was in business some time ago when I was a little younger. I paid the taxes. I had to have a business license in every state, in every community I got into. And I request that this council requires the same if it's at all possible. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Try again. Lisa Sony, and I'm a resident also. Upset, too, I think, of what's happening. Instead of a residential area, we now have a instead of a residential zone, it's a hospital zone. There, it's ambulances, fire department. Instead of hearing the patter of, children and sounds, it's other noises. And it's just been really disturbing. I think it affects the property values. It's upsetting to the neighbors. There's many of us here that aren't able to come tonight that would like to speak to you. That, actually, we didn't really get ourselves together as much as we could have. Everybody's aware of what's going on, but we didn't, pull together. But I can certainly speak for probably 30 of my neighbors in saying that they're really unhappy. It's just kind of scary to come to you tonight and hear what you said. It actually scared me. I felt really fearful of hearing what you had to say, that a neighborhood can be just taken over, quietly. I think it started back when we can close the mental hospitals. That's when this all began. The board and care facilities came into play. And I was teaching the Phoenix program. I was there 20 years, and all of my students were in board and care residents. And that meant they went to this facility with 6 residents, and they were all paid money for caring for them. However, their care in some instances was very poor. How could this be unregulated? How could you have old people in a home and no one cares? No one cares about them? If the owners aren't there, who's caring for them? I don't know, I'm upset. You can't tell, though, can you? So, but I don't get it. And I don't know what we can do. I mean, you're here and you're very sympathetic, and I know you're hearing us, Mayor and the council people. I know you're hearing what we're saying, but it seems like it's like we're this. Our hands are tied. We can't do anything. We're being Armstrong, basically, and saying, you know what? You know why they come to our area? Because they're in Walnut Creek, and it's a single-story home, and it's large. So there's a desirability for people to come into this area, and everybody knows it, but no one's talking about it. So I'm really grateful that you're all here listening. I don't know what the resolution is going to be, except caring about the people that are in those facilities. Caring about them. You just can't say, well, here's 6 people, and they're all old, and we just don't give a darn. We do care. I cared about every one of my students when they were in those homes, when they weren't being fed properly. That's why I became the shortcut cook on that job, because I had to feed 63 people in an hour and a half, and they were hungry. They were really hungry. So I can guarantee that things are happening in those homes that maybe shouldn't. And if Walnut Creek is going to ignore that issue, that is really a sad thing. I hope we don't. I hope we can get in there and take care of our own residents. We may not be able to take care of the whole country, but let's try and do what we can to help them and help us as residents here in that area. We'd appreciate it. Thank you so much for listening.
Thank you, Lisa. Does anyone else care to speak?
Yeah, hi. My name's Brownie Rocca. I live in Walnut Creek, and I'd like to take like a brief couple of seconds to address the topic about Proposition 86 and the cigarette tax law.
I'm sorry. This is on only the discussion that's on the agenda right now, which is...
Oh, it's not free?
Yeah.
And open
That was earlier in the evening under public communications, so right now we're only having comments on this item, which has to do with the...
Can we give them a chance after the
you
meeting?
got,
I just want to take a couple of seconds
if
just
you
to...
stay until after the meeting, and this is our last item, I would welcome you back to the microphone. We'll open public communications again.
Okay.
Okay?
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Brian.
That's
Okay, next speaker.
nothing to snicker at.
Hello, my name is Teresa Torbett. I live on Normandy Court in Walnut Creek. I am also a member of the community to which so many people have spoken to tonight. I'd like to thank you for addressing this issue. My husband and I moved to Walnut Creek and bought our first home 12 years ago. 10 years ago was the first time I heard residents concerned about this issue of residential daycares, residential 24-hour care, senior living facilities, halfway homes for disturbed youth, etc. And at the time, the City Planning Commission had, in effect, said, not our issue, can't help you, try again. This issue has continued to grow in our neighborhood and beyond. It's happening in Concord. It's happening in Pleasant Hill. It's happening, I'm sure, in Danville and San Ramon and other communities across the state. Although these homes are defined as single-family residences and are treated as such, they are businesses. They do not require business licenses. They do take up valuable resources of the community, including fire, ambulance. They do have impact on our schools. As more and more of these homes are converted into business, end-of-life residential homes for the elderly, newer families are not moving in. When we bought our home, we bought on a court. We assumed that the neighborhood would turn over and that newer, younger families would join us, that our children would have friends, that the school would continue to grow. Instead, fewer and fewer children are in our neighborhoods. School classrooms are having lowered enrollment. Teachers are being laid off. I'm sure that local businesses are being impacted. These are not people who are shopping, etc. This is a cottage industry. This is a very profitable industry. It's my understanding that some residents may be charged upwards to $3,000 a month to live in these homes. With 6 residents per home, you can imagine that that's quite a little nest egg to invest in your next purchase of a home down the street. This is very much like the game of Monopoly. I was very disturbed to learn that the state is considering the expansion of the number of individuals in these homes. And it's my understanding that it has at least begun to move in passage to actually allow homes with 7 or more. It's also my understanding that some of the homes in our neighborhood are already planning for that effect and are in the process of converting garages and closets into additional spaces. I am concerned about the care and welfare of these individuals. No one appears to be watching. Thank you very much for shedding some light on this very important issue. I'm hoping you use your voice to raise this issue to state and federal agencies. Thank you.
Does anyone else care to comment?
I'd like to. I'm Sandy Garfolo, 1855 Danielle Court in Walnut Creek. My husband and I bought our house over 20 years ago. We bought it on that particular court because we thought it would be safer for our son. It cost a little more than the surrounding houses because it had a 3-car garage, a pool, and the court. We've seen the whole character of our neighborhood change with these now 9 homes, 2 on our court. And I would like to just tell you about the last incident from the house 2 houses away from me. A resident from that house, under some kind of drug influence, drove his car onto the sidewalk of Danielle Court, crashed into the mailbox, the shrubbery, and removed it, continued in the neighborhood, and got to Treat Boulevard and crashed and injured himself, and he had to be hospitalized, and then came back to the home and later died. So we have individuals walking around the neighborhood who are supposed to be rehabilitating, but they're not. So now our neighborhood is different. We don't consider it safe, and we consider that we've lost property values. As a real estate agent working from my house, I have to be licensed. My business and my husband's business have to be licensed, but these businesses making far more than we are in gross revenues don't have to be. And they continue to grow, and that's what's frightening. We see our property values declining and our neighborhood changing, and we're just very upset about it. Thank you.
May I ask one question? Ma'am?
No.
Yeah. Ms. Garfolo?
Yes.
The person that you just described who had the accident, was this a young person or an older person?
I'm not really sure from the
Was it from an elder care, or was it?
No, he was from another type of home.
Okay, for younger people.
From my neighborhood.
Okay.
I would say he was in his 40s, that range. Yeah.
I'm sorry?
40s, maybe.
Okay, so he was there as a disabled person for some other...
I believe it is.
Is it a rehab house? Drug and alcohol rehab?
I don't know the description. No one has to tell me because it's just a normal residence. I've asked the owners, and she said, these are all my extended family.
I see.
That's all I can ever find out.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Appreciate it.
That one.
Any
That
other
one we could investigate, couldn't we?
Any other speakers? Okay, thank you.
Hi, my name is Betsy Dietrich Ortiz, and I wrote you the letter from Viamonte. And first, I'd just like to thank you very much for taking up the issue and listening about it. It's very gratifying, and I'm glad I live in Walnut Creek. As to the question about elder care facilities, I ran a search, and in 94598, there are 41 licensed elder care facilities for 6 elders and under. And as many people have said, these definitely are businesses. None of these are owner-occupied. They have 6 rooms for the elderly people, and they have a 24-hour nurse who's there. One person is there at all times. And I agree that this is a very important thing that we all need to accommodate, and it's just a question of balance, and I think that a neighborhood can only absorb so much before the character of the neighborhood starts to change. And we now have 4, and I'm worried that it's going down that road, and 2 within a block are now owned by the same people, and from what I understand, it is very lucrative. And so, these people are buying a home that was 3 bedrooms and 2 baths, and they're turning it into a 7-bedroom home. And they must be little cells in order to comply with all the restrictions that are in place for any single-family home. And I think that it's going to be a permanent change of use, because what family will come down the line and ever purchase that home again? And the type of use, it's very hard to argue against taking care of our elderly people. We all want to do that, but that could be any group home. And then, anyway, the concerns are all there. So I wanted to thank you very much for taking up the issue and urge you to pursue minimum distance requirements or something at the state law level. It seems to me that that makes a great deal of practical sense, and it would be nice if the League of Cities or some other lobbying advocacy on our behalf would be useful. So thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you. Any other speakers on this topic? Any other speakers? All right, thank you. I'll bring it back to the City Council. And just to first, let's answer some questions that were asked by the speakers. First, I want to clarify that the staff report that was available to everyone was what Ms. Baroni was using for her, for addressing us this evening. Ms. Baroni, can you verify that, or did you have some additional information?
No, that's correct. It's the staff report that was online, and if you don't have a copy, I can help you get a copy after the meeting or tomorrow.
There were 10 in the back at the beginning of the meeting, too. I just checked, and we're all out, so people have picked them up.
All right, so those...
When we're finished with the item, I will volunteer mine.
I would give you mine, but it's all scribbled up.
Yes, right.
Yeah.
I'm going to keep mine.
We'll make... It is available online at www.walnut-creek.org. And
Very easy to
all
remember.
available. Oh, wait, we're done now. Yeah, thank you.
We'll ask.
Second thing I would like to clear up in terms of, the reason that we are here tonight, the reason that Ms. Rainey asked to have this put on the agenda and the council enthusiastically supported this is because we are also concerned. We are here to help you. We are not the enemy, okay? Now, I'm sure that our city attorney, who is well versed in the state and federal law, would be happy to meet with you or your representatives and converse with you about the state and federal law and
I can assure you over time, the city has dealt with these kind of issues time and time again, and we have tried constantly to support protecting our neighborhoods and working to do what we can. But we are often tied, our hands are often tied. But I'd be happy, I know Mr. Paul Bayaresta, our city attorney, would be happy to meet with you, and after the meeting, you can get together and discuss that. Now, having clarified that, let's get back to some questions that were raised by the speakers. One is, can we require a business license for these people who are operating a business in their home?
Yeah, I believe the answer is to the extent that we are talking about the residential care homes, 6 or fewer, they have to be treated as exactly the same as any other, quote, residential use, and so we don't require a business license.
So they are not considered to be a business under federal and state law, and we are preempted from doing that. Is that correct?
That's correct, unless it's one of the larger facilities.
When they go 7 or more, then we can require a business license?
I believe that is the case.
Do we do that with the child care? I don't think we did that with the child care.
If you'll just hold off, please. It's our turn now, and if we can't resolve all those questions now, believe me, we'll have other opportunity.
Well, and frankly, I mean, it's not really the crucial question, because our business licenses, they are simply revenue-raising measures. They are not regulatory. So regardless of whether we require a business license or not, it doesn't affect what they are allowed to do in that facility.
All right. Then someone mentioned that they had researched and found 41 licensed elder care facilities in the Walnut Creek area.
No, just in the 9-8 zip code.
Within the 9-8 zip code.
But it was all for 6 and under, she said, I believe.
No.
6 or less elder.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
6 and fewer. No, I'm sorry. No, 6 people or fewer.
Yes.
So there is some licensing, apparently. Can we then find out through the state who is licensed and where they are located?
Yes.
How many in Walnut Creek?
All right. And in terms of working with some of the suggestions you have come up with, we could, as a city, lobby both through our local elected representatives to the state and to the federal government. We also have a lobbyist in Sacramento we could ask to assist us. We could ask the League of California Cities to take this up on behalf of all cities in the state. Those are a few of the things that we can do. Yes.
Well, additionally, I had been thinking about this, and I did talk to Guy Houston's office, and I think Teresa did also, and they get approached on so many issues, and a single voice coming up and saying, hello, doesn't always work. And what I was thinking is a first step might be to take it to the Contra Costa Mayor's Conference and make a presentation to the Contra Costa Mayor's Conference, get at least Contra Costa County on board. We do have in our Contra Costa Mayor's Conference is Maria president? Vice president?
Well, that would be the East Bay League of Cities.
But she's vice president.
She's president of the California League of Cities.
That's what I mean.
East Bay League of Cities would be the group, not the mayor's conference.
She's not the mayor.
Oh, but I was going to the mayor's conference.
Well,
I mean,
how about both?
Both is fine. But I would think, both would be fine. But I think you start there, and then you go with the power of the league to our representatives. And this is ironic. When I first brought up and asked some questions about this, Paul reported back, and I didn't even know this when my husband was in the Senate. This issue came up. I was not on the Walnut Creek City Council at the time, and Dick tried to carry a bill to limit the numbers in a city and it never even got out of committee. So I went home and told him, I knew I liked you, but, didn't even know he'd done it. But that was the success that he had. So I think if we get the power of the League of California Cities behind us and lobby from that direction. And it's not that we're trying to do away with these facilities.
No.
We're all recognizing the importance of it. It is that they can live in our communities without destroying our neighborhoods.
Well, and what I would like to have a better understanding of, and I think it's a very good point, is there state licensing for the care homes that are taking care of 6 or fewer people? There is. I heard 2 different things.
There certainly is licensing for 6 or fewer. The question I can't answer is, do all homes that would qualify for an exemption under the Fair Housing Law have to be licensed? I don't believe they necessarily would if they meet the handicap definitions under the Fair Housing Law.
If they are doing elder care, do they have to have a license? And I would like to have an answer on that at some point.
Oh, okay.
If you need to research that, that's fine, but I certainly wouldn't want my parents to be, or myself as I age, to be in a place that's not
supervised.
I mean, the answer is generally yes. I mean, that's not to say there can't be homes out there that are renting just out rooms and bringing in kind of under the radar elderly, just as there may be lots of other group homes out there that are renting out.
So if those are reported and we can substantiate that they are operating without a license, then can the state intervene?
If they are providing the type of care that requires a license.
If they're charging for care, if they're contracting and charging for care to care for an elderly person, can we inquire about their licensing?
Yeah, I'm sorry if I'm not making this clear, because it's almost some circular reasoning that happens in the way the state law applies, because there is a certain level of care that when you provide that level of care, that is what triggers the licensing requirement.
So it's not whether or not someone pays you for the care. It's whether or not it reaches a certain level of quality?
Right, because if I were to start leasing out rooms in my house to people who happen to be elderly, that wouldn't trigger a requirement under state law to get a license. It's only once they start providing a certain level of care for those people in my home that it triggers a licensing requirement.
Is there a definition of that level of care as stated by the state law?
There is. I guess I don't have it right in front of me, but we can certainly get that information for you as well.
That would be good.
But could I just raise, you mentioned that you could be renting out rooms to Paul in your home for 3 or 4 or 5, but that would then be a group residential, right? And that would not be permitted. So if we were aware of that, we could come and the city could come and shut you down?
That's correct.
Depending on how many police officers are bringing, is that what you're saying? No.
No, it's just then all of a sudden we have to deal with federal law, and to the extent that I was leasing rooms to people who were, quote, handicapped, which is not necessarily the elderly, then...
But you said you had, for example, 3 elderly you brought in.
Right.
So theoretically, if we knew about that, you are a group home, a group residential, that is not permitted in the neighborhood.
That's correct.
Okay, I'm just trying to clarify some of these little pieces. And one other thing, I just want to tag on to Sue. I can also bring this to ABAG, that it's 101 cities and 9 counties. And if we can get something going there, I also could bring it to the California Councils of Government, because they exist throughout the state. I'm the past president of that one as well. And most cities and counties in California probably are dealing with very similar issues. And like us, I think everybody wants to see that those who need help and care receive it. We just don't want it all lumped together in a single neighborhood, impacting everybody who lives there. And I think that's what we're trying to sort out. How can we best deal with it?
I think ABAG and the COG groups or whatever it is, is a good idea, because there's a very nice article in here from the League of California Cities, and David DeBerry is city attorney for the city of Orange.
Yes.
And there's an attorney Riverside. So we are not alone, and the thing is to raise the issue and get mutual support so that we can affect the legislators.
And if we're going to, it sounds like we're going to perhaps carry the banner on this one, and I would ask that Valerie and Paul work together and put together a white paper so that when we go to these various organizations, we aren't talking, and I know it's difficult, but we aren't talking in such circular motions, that we can come forth with a recommendation of how we can take this on to the legislature and give the community back to the communities.
The support that they need, right.
Because I think it's fascinating that there's 48 just in the 98 zip code. So somebody's found those. And, did you say 48 or 41? 41 in the 98 zip code. That's and that's the kind of thing that you can show to your legislators and say this is having an impact. And so that's the kind of stuff we need.
In the interim, however, there were some suggestions in this article that I believe we have in the magazine article, Western City, that we have used in the past because we have had some problems with homes for, I don't know what, recovering whatever, that have created problems in the neighborhood. And some of them we managed to finally have abated because they were not living up to the, not the zoning requirements, but what am I trying to say, the safety requirements for just a single-family home. They didn't have adequate, can't remember what all, but the things that you would have to do when you send a building inspector out, a lot of them have added on unsafely, and they've converted garages, for example, into living quarters for several people, which is unsafe unless they have put in certain things for that. So those are the kinds of things that we can follow up on within the city, but we're not going door-to-door knocking. We need to have it brought to our attention, and then we will indeed send out a building inspector and find out if there is something that needs to be corrected, and maybe it turns out that there are other issues in that particular place that we can deal with through a variety of things. We also need, from time to time, to bring in social services. We're talking about whether people in some of these places are being adequately cared for. That is an issue for county social services, and we certainly would be very happy to work with them and insist they come and take a look at some of these places. So before you just go and say, well, they can't do anything, I think we'll try to do what we can do, given the constraints under which we operate now, to see what, if anything, we can do. And beyond that, we will see if we can get the attention of enough legislators to point out to them the kinds of problems that, as Sue said, it may be a case of unintended consequences. They wanted to do the right thing for a certain group of people, but had no idea the impact they're having on a larger area. So we'll do our best. At least that's what I think we're saying.
All right, so I think we have consensus that we are going to lobby our federal and state representatives, that we will work with the League of Cities and the city's legislative lobbyists, that we will work with other municipalities in terms of groups like the Mayor's Conference, East Bay League of Cities, and the League of California Cities. And we will do some research to come up with some of the answers to questions we have today, that Mr. Riestra and Ms. Brony will work together on putting together some kind of a white paper so that we have something council members can use as we go out to these various groups to lobby, and that Mr. Riestra will meet with you to after the meeting to set up a time, or if you have a card, you can hand it up so that you can connect, so that you can have a discussion about your legal questions or assumptions. And then I would encourage all of you to address your concerns to your state and federal representatives. And we can't do it alone. You can't do it alone, and we can't do it alone. We have to do it together. So I appreciate your coming and sharing your concerns with us. And this item now is closed, and we will move on to completing our agenda.
to item 6, council member and staff announcements.
Communications again for the young man?
Pardon me?
Public communications for the young man?
Oh, yes, the young gentleman
In the back.
who wanted, Brian Uraga?
Brian?
Uraga, did you want to speak? Brian Uraga, did you want to speak to the council? Under public communications, which is reopened?
There's another one. There's another one if somebody wants to.
Thank you for having me speak again. I just want to
Please state your name and address, please.
Brian Uraga, and I live in Walnut Creek. And I really just wanted to address that I think that the Proposition Act as 86 shouldn't be voted on, because what's going to cause teen smokers to quit? Raising the tax like $3, it's not going to make them quit. It's going to just make them want to get more money to buy more cigarettes, and that's going to make the tobacco industries get more money, and so they're going to become more powerful, and it's going to be a never-ending process of them getting more money and making more advertisements for tobacco, and it's not really going to do anything. So that's just what I think.
Okay.
That's all I want to say.
Question? I appreciate you sharing your thoughts with us. Thank you very much. Thank you for coming to the microphone.
Yes.
Okay. Any other public comment? Seeing none, we will move ahead with council member and staff announcements or reports on activities. After the meeting, if you don't mind. We've already closed. Okay, thank you. Ms. Rainey? Public comment.
I would just announce that Broadway Plaza is going to once again fund the downtown trolley during the holiday season to extend the hours. Last holiday season, from Thanksgiving through the first of the year, the trolley ran from until about 10 o'clock on weeknights and 11 o'clock on Friday and Saturday to help accommodate the employees and people downtown to help alleviate parking and traffic. So I hope you will all use the downtown trolley during the holidays. It'd be much more convenient, and I want to thank Broadway Plaza.
Do you also want to mention that it might be a little bit easier to identify the stops for the trolley?
Yes.
I thought you might.
Yes. They're you know, you sort of wander around the street, you don't know where the trolley is going to stop. But come around Thanksgiving time, there will be beautiful new sign that says, "The free ride trolley stop." So you will know. It's very distinctive. It stands out, and you will know, and you'll take the trolley.
Okay, thank you. And thanks for working on that. Mr. Scrub?
No.
You don't want to mention the ice rink?
When is the ice rink opening? Before all the kids leave here tonight?
Ice rink.
When is the ice rink
opening? The Friday before, the week before Thanksgiving. It'll be November 17th.
November 17th, the ice rink is open.
Work is starting by the electrical crews this week.
Okay, and that'll be in Civic Park again, right?
Yes,
Next
ma'am.
to the library. Good. Do you have anything?
I just realized that in going through our consent calendar, we didn't mention the items on the ballot that are really important to all of us. 1A, B, C, D, E are all having to do with infrastructure. The first two have to do with transportation. One is to guarantee that the funding that we thought we were going to get under the last Proposition 42 will not be taken away to balance the budget as it has been in the past. That money will go for transportation and transit improvements, including pedestrian, bicycle walkways. So that's very important. They also have, I'm trying to think of all the things there. The others one of them has to do with housing, we talked about housing and how we need it, with some of the costs involved in trying to provide housing for people who need it, particularly those entering the workforce, police officers, firefighters, teachers, et cetera, who are trying to establish in communities and be there to serve their people, and the cost of housing has been very, very difficult. It will also provide housing for battered women and those who really need to have a place to live that's safe. And I'm trying to think, I can't remember all of the others, but there's one also that helps with parks. But the next one I want to point out is 84, Proposition 84. We heard a report on water tonight from the Contra Costa Water District, Mr. Campbell. And he's talking about keeping it safe. He's talking about the levees. We need money, tremendous amount of money for levee repairs in the state. And you may say, well, I don't care, I don't live near a levee. Well, you should care, because 2/3 of the people in California get their drinking water from the levees, from the Delta. Those levees go, some of the main ones go, Sacramento's under 13 feet of water, among other things. Now, you may say that's one of the better things that could happen to Sacramento, but you're drinking water.
Before they change that legislation, though.
Yeah, right. I'll get the legislation through first. So those are all important for the infrastructure of the state, and I'm sorry we didn't think to talk about them a little bit more earlier. So
yeah, that's true. It's actually 1A that is for roadways, public transit, bike lanes, other transportation systems, affordable housing, parks, and other amenities.
Yes.
That is, so it would it'd be very important. The state has neglected its infrastructure for a very, very long time while digging ourselves a huge financial hole. And this would also allow for all of the Proposition 42 funds, which are the gas tax, to actually be used for the repair and maintenance of existing streets. And it would mean that it would close a loophole in the gas tax revenue so that it would protect that money, so it would have to go back to transportation and local streets and road improvements. Anything else this evening, staff? No? All right.
Oh, I do.
Yes?
Just
Okay.
one last thing. Everybody's thinking, oh, good, it's over, it's over. I was sitting at the traffic light at Civic and Ignacio, and I looked over to my left, and I would tell you, if you notice that newly landscaped area right there, this lady has pounded on us for a couple years or more, saying, who owns that? And we found out we did, and why can't we do something about it? And, there's no water, there's, you're going to nag. It's so pretty.
It's beautiful.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
Oh, I'm the nag, huh?
Well, to add on to that,
I'm giving you credit
It
for
is.
it.
Thank you
to
very
add on
much.
to that,
I
Mrs.
think
Rainey, the same contractor, I believe it's a very similar design, is now underway at one of our entryways to the city at Olympic and 680. So it should look fairly
Olympic,
similar.
right? Olympic
Correct.
and 680.
Yes.
Yeah, that way. And he came in right on time, on budget. All right. I would like to, before adjourning, note that the regularly scheduled City Council meeting of November 7th is canceled due to the election, which is on that day. And the next regularly scheduled meeting will be held on November 21st, 2 weeks after that. But I do hope that everyone will take that opportunity to go to the polls, to vote, to exercise our rights as Americans to vote for what we think is right. And then also, the night before, on Monday, November 6th at 7 p.m., we will have a special meeting of the City Council regarding the continuation of the St. Matthew Lutheran Church agenda item. So I adjourn this meeting until that time.